everybody, and welcome to Marketer Live. This was supposed to be last week's, and by the beautiful fate of the world, ended up getting pushed to this week. I am so excited for our guest this week. This is Casey Armstrong. He's the CMO over at ShipBob, also my former manager, and so I have personal experience watching him hire people, and it is downright impressive. So this is a true interview where I will be asking my own personal questions to try to figure out how the heck do you do this. Before we dive into that, though, do just want to give another very quick thank you to the folks over at the Webby Awards for sponsoring Marketer Live in partnership with building the workforce of the future and trying to figure out what that looks like for a variety of different brands, but in particular for marketing and creative teams. Casey, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of
You
course.
speak too kindly.
It's not too kind. It's like the absolute least that I can say for sure. So we ended up meeting when you joined BigCommerce, and you didn't join immediately as VP. You were director of digital when you first joined.
Mhm.
Perfect. And moved up to VP pretty quickly. But can we kind of start there? Can you talk to me a little bit about, the team you inherited over at BigCommerce when you first got there? And then I'd love to learn a little bit more about, how you began to hire and began to build a team over there.
Here's the hack: just stumble into awesome people that are already on the team, inherit amazing people. So, obviously, just to pick a handful, like you and Nigel were there, Nigel Stevens, and so that definitely helped. Just like when I joined ShipBob, people like Christina Lipinski, she was already there, and it definitely makes your life easier when there are some extremely strong people already in place that you can quickly rely on. And of course, you've got to build rapport and trust with them, and try to help them level up their career and also have them level up your career as well. So I guess where do you want to go? Where do you want to go from there?
Well, I mean, whether it's over at BigCommerce or over at ShipBob, again, where you've built two teams from there. I mean, I really want to hear a little bit more about how you thought through which marketers to hire first, how you worked through building out cases for those hires, and then also like how you found them, right? Like how you brought them onto what you say were already, really high performing teams. Like how do you find other very high performing marketers to bring onto the team?
All right, there's a lot we can unpack there. So I don't know, keep me going in the right direction. So, well, one is I guess it depends on how big of a team or if you've inherited a team, but is and of course it depends on like your background and experience, but is understanding like there's only so much you can do at a time. And as the manager, of course you want to be involved and see where you can get your hands dirty and help as well. But a lot of your job is to put your team members in a position to succeed. And so it's really like thinking through the different teams or individuals that are currently in place and which are the most high performing, and so you can kind of let them run for a while, and which have the biggest areas for improvement. And so there again, at BigCommerce there were some aspects that were going really well, and there's some aspects that could have used some improvement. And so it's just kind of like trying to methodically go from there and see what you can do, and figuring out like, is it the people? Is it the processes? Is it the approach? And then, or if you have like a smaller team, like when I joined ShipBob, the team was a little bit smaller. Is what are the areas that are doing well? Where can we level up quickly that will really impact the business from driving more awareness or leads or new customers, and revenue ultimately is the goal. And then how can we do that, sustainably and repeatably? And so again, it's just I think methodically cutting down like from like a handful of channels or different functions. You don't need to chase everything, but you should know like what is going to be the most impactful, and then figuring that out for the business, and just really making sure you knock those out of the park. I think a lot of people make the misstep of like chasing all the shiny pennies or trying to like make sure everything is good, but I forget where I even heard this term, but it's like you got to be fine with like these little burning fires everywhere, and really focus on like what are the big like most impactful things first.
Yeah, I like that. Well, so you have built teams again over at BigCommerce, over at ShipBob, and then you've also done it though at smaller organizations, right? So how can startup brands think
Mhm.
about which marketers to hire first, what order maybe to hire them in. Like if you were starting, a startup today, how might you think how to arm a marketing organization?
That's like the toughest part, I think, is that first hire, because you want somebody that can come in and they have to be very involved. They have to be in the weeds on everything, but is somebody that can also build out a team. And that's where it's just you want to get somebody in that can make an impact and start doing stuff, but you still need to be patient with yourself on like finding the right person. Like I know when you joined Marketer Hire, overall the company in general was relatively small, but it's finding somebody like yourself that can be doing a lot of the work, but it's also seeing things at a very large scale and like with a very large team, and so can take a lot of those lessons learned and apply that as you build out a team, or even give suggestions on how other parts of the team build. And so I think it's, again, somebody that will get their hands dirty and is not afraid to do that. And like, even myself, which I'm not necessarily, my time's not necessarily was best spent by getting my hands dirty, but I love getting into the weeds and like actually doing like the real marketing work as well. And so I think it's finding people that are hungry there. I think the hungry aspect, it's a word that I always use, and even like the post interview surveys we have with the teams is like, are these people hungry? Do they like want to prove something? I guess this is kind of like semi-tangential, but like when looking at these people as well, is have they had to market something where either the competition above them was like immense or the product was not good? And I know that's something that I've even have given feedback or suggestions to the recruiters. I know Brent Anderson was commenting on our LinkedIn post before, and you say, how do you find great people? Well, part of it is also if you have an amazing talent team, like somebody like Brent, who's just like teeing up amazing candidates, but is, again, the feedback for them, or even to myself when I'm going out trying to recruit people as well, is, and I think one of the things that benefited me was at times marketing a product that was so far behind the competition. And I'm not talking about BigCommerce here, but an example of BigCommerce here, which I know really helped both of us, is we had an amazing product and like, a great sales function, so that once we got like people in the door, we were able to hand it off to this like well-oiled machine on the sales side, and then they were able to sell a product they could believe in. But from a competition standpoint, it was off the charts. There's Shopify, who was trying to become synonymous with e-commerce. There was Woo, there was Magento, there was Salesforce Commerce Cloud. And so I think people that have experienced those types of battles, where you're always like trying to punch above your weight, is very important.
Yeah. How do you like what interview questions are you asking to figure that stuff out? I mean, for one, for figuring out if they've been at an organization where they're having to punch above their weight. I mean, you can look at the organizations they've worked at, but to figure out if they're hungry, right? Or if they have something to prove, what are you asking people in interviews to help you suss that out?
So a couple of things is, a question that I always ask is, tell me one of your favorite wins in the last 6 to 12 months. And if they don't immediately light up and have an example that they're very proud of, it's not necessarily like a deal killer, but I usually view it as like a red flag, because 6 to 12 months is a really long time. And there should be something that really stands out to you that you're proud of, that you worked on and you helped get across the finish line. And then from there, it's really diving into like, why was that important? And like, what was your involvement? And especially if like on the marketing side, if it's driving demand and driving revenue, they should be able to talk through like, what was the thought process behind like that project or that initiative? Who was involved? Like, what did the rollout plan look like? And then let's get into the math. Like, okay, so you spent X, or this much time was spent leading up to it. Okay, how much demand did it drive? Like, talk me through the funnel. Like, what was the funnel? What were you tracking? And then let's talk through those numbers, because then also gives you a sense of like, how involved were they? How competently can they speak about it? And then also can give you a level of the scale. If they're like, yeah, it was great, we did all this stuff, and yeah, we drove like, 10 leads, and we got this one opportunity. And you ask about revenue, and they're like, oh yeah, well, it's a long sales cycle. It's like, okay, well then why was that actually important then? And just kind of digging in on these types of things, and not just like allowing things to sit like at the surface level. So anyways, I just like to understand like, and also I think when you ask them for like, what's a big win for them, hopefully they should be able to pull out something that kind of signals like what they find important in the role and how they approach it. And so that doesn't necessarily get to like the hunger standpoint, But I think that's one of the toughest things to like suss out is really like how hungry are they?
How do you know when it is better as a full-time hire, when it's better to go with an agency, when it's better to go with a freelancer?
That's always a balance. And honestly, sometimes it's good to start with an agency or a freelancer, and then you bring in a full-time hire, and then you go back and also complement them, and then you just keep expanding it. Then you complement them with a freelancer or an agency, and then maybe you hire another person full-time, and and then maybe the freelancer, the agency goes away, or maybe they stay, or maybe the freelancer is somebody that you hire. And so I think it just continues to like evolve on itself, and like it's what we did at BigCommerce. It's what we're doing, time and time again over at ShipBob. A lot of it depends on the budget that you have to play with, and also I think the impact that you can drive or that you think that the channel can drive. And so, and also like where is there a need for them to be extremely into the weeds of the business, and where can you maybe augment or fast track the success by bringing people in internally. So examples. So one, let's just say like SEO. Do you have somebody that's an amazing content writer and like a content team, but doesn't necessarily understand SEO as well as like the best of the best? And also SEO is pretty time intensive. And so, can you bring in an agency to complement, your content person or your content team versus hiring for an SEO person? And also the best of the best are really expensive. And so you might be able to bring in an agency that might cost maybe even a little bit more or the same, but they're people that you could never hire yourself. And then on the paid side, especially if you're starting earlier on, oftentimes like they'll take a percentage of your monthly spend. And so there sometimes it's just a math equation. Like if they take 10% of your spend and you're spending 20K a month, so that's 2K, that's way below a full-time employee, and you still might be able to get like a pretty good agency or freelancer. Once you start spending over $100,000 a month, and that's 10K a month, that's a strong full-time employee. And so where does it make sense there? Because can they spend all their time, turning the dials, but also thinking about things strategically and get into the weeds with like the sales team? I think it really starts to make sense.
Yeah, I like that. Now, to the best of your ability, or just to like the extent that you are comfortable, let me know. What does the ShipBob marketing org look like? Like how is it structured?
Yeah, so we have a relatively small team for our stage. We've got a lot of open roles, and we got more opens yesterday.
FYI,
Yes,
everybody.
spoiler, I think, or maybe now they have. And so we have our head of loosely content, and I say loosely just because there's a lot that like she oversees. And then under that team, there's people there's several other people on the content team, and then we have a marketing automation function. But again, with content, that's obviously content, that's SEO, that's PR, that's social, that's customer marketing, and again, marketing automation. And so that's one function. We have another function, which is what I'll call like our growth and digital function. That includes website, MarTech, that includes paid, all things paid, that includes CRO. We have a full like self-service function at ShipBob, which, for like a BigCommerce or marketer hire, actually marketer hire is probably pretty hands-on, but like for BigCommerce or, if you're signing up for Shopify, a lot of people can just sign up on their own. That's actually a pretty big differentiator for us at ShipBob. And so under that digital function, we've got people that handle that whole like onboarding, the onboarding process, like the support staff for those that are serving themselves. And then we've got product marketing, partner marketing, affiliate marketing, and yes, and then whoever I'm offending by not remembering.
Well, so with a small team at y'all's stage, I mean, one thing I imagine you must think through a lot. And I imagine that because I also saw you think through it a lot over at BigCommerce as well, which is bandwidth of individuals, right? How much they can actually take on before becoming burned out or whatever else might happen. I mean, do you have any kind of go-to red flags that you see when team members start getting to those stages, and how you can kind of address that? I either with prioritization, bringing on additional help. How do you think through making sure that a team can execute properly?
So that's one of the toughest parts, honestly, because a lot is expected. I mean, it's not natural for you to be working at a company that's either creating or helping create not entirely new type of business or an entirely new category, and doing that at a global scale, and then probably competing against people larger or smaller than you that are always attacking you, and then doing that 100% or 100% growth every single year, and then that denominator or that base from the year prior is now twice what it was before, and now you need to go like double that again. And so, like, it's why people like you and I sign up for these things, because it's a lot of fun and it really pushes us, but it's not natural for a lot of people. And so I think that's where you need to do your best in the hiring process. And I'm far from perfect at this, is like finding people that find that level of discomfort as like rewarding versus like a detriment. But it's also, talking to your team. And again, they're adults. Like, you don't need to like coddle them, or you shouldn't need to. And if you do, then that's probably a red flag. But is just understanding like where are they burning out and why. And so I think that's where, as like a manager, is helping them feel comfortable of like saying no to certain things, or again, like that small fires concept, like let that burn over there, or like that's fine if we're not focusing on that. Like there's always a million things you can do, but what are the handful of things that are they're going to really move the needle? I think that was our team's starting to get a lot bigger now, but I think that was one of the benefits of when the team was smaller before. It was like we were so forced to prioritize like the important things versus like being able to do everything. And again, I think that's where you can drive a lot of impact versus like, well, if this can drive like a 1 to 5% gain, like whatever, that's cool and all, but like what are going to be the big swings that can help double the business every single year. And then another thing too is, again, empowering the team of what to do and what not to do, and letting them know that you have your back. Another thing is also is like, if the business is growing and if the team's performing, you should continue to be hiring under them or alongside them. And so it's also being open with them with the data and the feedback from the leadership, from other leadership, is like, help me prove that we need to grow this team. And so like, if you want to hire additional content people, if you want to hire like a marketing automation person, if you want to hire more paid search, paid social people, well, help me make the case first of all, and often with data behind it. But also let's prove out the function today with one individual. Let's overachieve, let's just say with you, and then that will help us justify bringing somebody else to help complement you so you can do more stuff. And so again, it's just, hey, help me, help you by let's prove this out over time.
All of this sounds beautiful and amazing. And again, I've seen all of this work in practice. So I know that it works, is effective. You're very good at it. But can you talk me through maybe a moment or a hiring experience in which things didn't go well, and what you learned from it?
Yeah. So I think that you have to be careful here on like hiring with like culture fits, because you don't want everybody to just like think and act the same. Like I think there's a lot of value by bringing in people that will like push the boundaries a little bit. And I really appreciate that, people that will push me or push their colleagues just to like think differently. But there's definitely, I'm thinking of a certain hire where like this individual was very intelligent, and very good at like the job that they were hired for, but just from like a cultural fit perspective was such a miss, and like was very, again, I'm trying to think of the words carefully, I don't know, just almost like demeaning or condescending often, and like, and kind of use their intelligence and experience to almost like kind of push others away, and always kind of wanted to work on an island. Whereas I think that some of the things I look for is, can this person be a good teammate and collaborative? Do they have experience across multiple functions so that they can help collaborate there? I don't like to for the most part, I don't like these just like centers of excellence where it's like this person only does X. Like they should be able to cross across other things. So anyways, long story short is just making sure like, can they actually work well with the team?
Right.
And even if that like on an island they would crush this role and like knock it out of the park, like it's a team sport, and so you need to hire accordingly.
Right. Well, so I mean, that also then brings up remote work in general, and you I think have done remote work for a large part
Yeah, a
of,
long time.
right? Yeah. So How do how do you manage that, right? How do you balance the async meetings from like the Zoom meetings? How do you balance fatigue there? How do you manage autonomy? Like how in general do you think about setting up a strong remote work org?
That's where I think having a very open company in regards to like the data that they share. Like I know one of the things I appreciate at ShipBob, where they've even pushed my thinking of like transparency further, is like, we'll share the board slides of the whole company and take questions in real time. Like we'll walk through the P&L so people truly know where we are as a business. And I think that's really important because then it trickles on down. So like, the C-suite's leadership team, and then below that leadership team, like that's the kind of the culture that you're building. Because especially with like remote, if people are uncertain and don't have access to, let's say, this information or this data in real time, or that can be quickly assembled when they request it, it's tough for them to do their jobs as well as they could. And then just having, I think, consistent time set up to like meet with people, just these open lines of communication. And again, I don't know if I'm the best to answer this, just because for better or worse, like I have been running remote teams for like well over a decade. And so some of the stuff is just a no brainer. But again, it's also just where like the people that you hire, are they comfortable with this stuff? Because like I've had people that were really talented at their job and they're like, I just don't know about this remote stuff. And that's totally fine. That's their decision. But then, it's making sure like, well, maybe we shouldn't pull the trigger on this person because we don't want to put them in a position not to succeed. And also we don't necessarily want to hire them if they're going to leave after 6 months because they're not happy.
Right, right. Yeah, one of the best pieces of advice, or I don't even know if you said it to me as advice or if it was just like something that we needed to do, which you kind of mentioned there, which was you have always been very specific about when you bring someone new on, whether it's a freelancer, an agency, a full-time hire, whatever, making sure that there is a timeline, a very short timeline to a first win for that organization, for that person. Can you talk through a little bit the mentality behind that and why that can be so helpful?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think it's probably something I should keep reminding myself. But it's just, again, you're hiring these people and you're putting them in often like relatively high pressure roles, all things considered. I mean, at the end of the day, we're able to do our work on a computer. So, how high pressure could it be? Is of course, like just getting them that confidence in themselves that they can drive impact within the business, helping them get confidence and build rapport and get trust with their colleagues, both within the team and across the organization, and be able to highlight that. And because people that you trust and you see as a winner, you're going to naturally gravitate towards. And so I think that just getting that flywheel kind of flying as quickly as possible. And also oftentimes you'll see, especially like say in your role, like you see all the things you guys could be doing, let's say a marketer hire, and you bring in somebody, especially if like they're at more of like a leadership level, and there's like a million things that you'd like them to accomplish and do. And if you give them too big of a project, it's difficult because it's like, well, that's like a 3-month project. And then they're going to be heads down working on that all the time. And then everybody's like, well, what the heck is this person doing? Versus like, get them some quick wins, chunk up like the project. And so that there's like things that they can celebrate or like deliver on faster. And again, I just think that's important also for their morale as well, because they don't want to come in and just like inherit some like slog of a mess. And again, none of us are perfect with this, but I think that's pretty important.
Final question for me here is like why? What about building and leading marketing teams gets you excited? Why do this day in and day out?
Well, I guess like the building and stuff, I don't know, there's probably some weird stuff we're always trying to like prove to ourselves that like we can accomplish this, or we're just as good or as better as the next person. And so it's probably some like weird ego thing, even though I try not to think that.
Sounds like good ego.
Good ego. But again, it's like you want to prove it to yourself, and like you want to make yourself proud and like accomplish cool things. And also you just see the opportunity. And also for us, like at ShipBob or BigCommerce or at Marketer Hire, like you're really creating a ton of jobs and opportunities, and like allowing these people, not just in the US, but around the world, to achieve their dreams and grow their businesses. And I know the time that we save merchants and allowing them to do their business. So again, it's very rewarding. In regards to like hiring smart teams, honestly, it's just view it as like being lazy to an extent. Like you don't want to work all night, every night. You need to find people that can make your lives easier. And that's extremely important. And also like you'll start hitting some ceiling or plateau if like you don't bring in the right people. And so how can you like keep pushing yourself? And I think especially when things are going well, just think through, okay, how can we break this down or bring in somebody that's smart and thinks about it differently to disrupt this? Because we've just got to keep evolving.
Awesome. Well, Casey, thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us this week. We are going to take this recording, make it on demand for everybody, and we'll be sending it out for all the folks who had to miss. But thank you so much. It's always so fantastic to chat with you.
Thank you. Likewise.